Hi, I'm Lana.
And I'm Sherri.
And this is Real Estate Tips with SNL. Today, we have Adam.
Hello.
Adam.
You know Adam?
I do.
Here I am.
Oh, got it. Crack Daddy Adam.
That's me.
I'd love to hear the story. So, tell us about you. And you are A1 Foundation Crack Repair.
Have it everywhere.
I know. Like, you got all the bling
myself,
bling.
Right?
Tell us a little bit about yourself, because we want to roll into some good juicy stuff.
Sure. All right.
roll with
Well,
it, baby.
take notes because you got the pad there.
Yes.
My business, A1 Foundation Crack Repair, we've been doing this for over 30 years. I know I don't look like I've been doing it for over 30 years because I haven't, because we're second generation now. So my father-in-law, Rich, the Crack Man, you may have seen him out in the world, out in the wild. He wears some wacky wild hats out there.
That's great.
And he started the business in the early 90s. I worked with him. I've been with my wife now since we were 14. So like I'm saying, forever. And so as the business matured and I went to college, I kind of always worked for him on the side and, had my own career. And then when the came time to see whether or not we were interested in the business, really, we were. And we took it over, probably 7 years ago now. And he's still involved. It's his third child. But yeah, so when we bought the business and my father-in-law, the Crack Man, Rich the Crack Man, my daughter was probably 2 or 3 at the time. And she says, well, Daddy, you can't be the Crack Man. Grandpa's the Crack Man. And I was like, well, you're right. We can't have two. It's a big problem. Yeah. And so she says, I'm like, well, what should I be? I'm open to suggestions. And she goes, sits and thinks. She goes, well, I think you should be Crack Daddy. And so we got to lean in a little bit to it. So my side of the website says Adam Crack Daddy, and then Rich the Crack Man.
Is there Crack Mommy?
My wife is the Crack Mom, but she does not like to be the face of the business, saying Crack Mom on the front. So no.
So how old's that daughter today?
She is 11, going to be 12. Shortly, and she works for the business on after school. And,
nice.
She does
really
the dirty work.
Family business.
Oh yeah, she how can I make money? Well, the bathrooms need to be cleaned, and so literally starting at the bottom up. If she wants to earn her way, and that's the way she does it. And but it's truly a family business. Through and through. I mean, we have more than just family that work for us, obviously, but the core of it is family, and we treat it like a family business because we're in people's houses, we're homeowners ourselves. So we try to, be respectful of, hey, if this were our house, how would we treat it? And, while we're a business to make money, just like any other business, it's more than that because it's a legacy for our family. And so we try to treat it like with honesty and respect for what we do.
That's comfort for people to hear because you never know when service providers come in your house, how they're going to act, and you already have that set up. Tell me, what is A1 Foundation Crack Repair? What is it that you do? What's the list?
Kind of says what it is.
It is, but it's more than this.
I believe that it's more than that because
I
can't imagine. So tell us everything.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, we stop water and we repair foundations. And so the vast majority of what we do is on residential, although we do some commercial work. And we do foundation crack repair, as the name says. That's kind of the origin of the business. But anything where water might be penetrating through a foundation, whether it's cracks or sewer pipes or anything that goes to the outside, that's where we get involved in. What sometimes structural repairs where houses are starting to shift, we get involved in those. And then we also do stone foundations, all the older homes in New England. That for stone foundations, that's a whole huge section of our business that we do every single day, which is the masonry side of the business. Permanent lally columns for, the support posts. So it's not just, and a lot of people say, well, it's just cracks. Well, it's not just cracks. We do, that is the founding portion of the business. It's the core of our business, but we do a lot more than that. It's really basically from the ground down is where we thrive. And we kind of experts in that. So
you're saying, because I was thinking when you say crack foundations, we always think of concrete, right? Poured concrete, fixing it, and block foundation, you're filling it in, right? It's like more of a fill-in type thing.
Not always, but yes, essentially, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm always thinking, because of where we're located, granite, stone, brick.
Yep.
And, that
Yep.
is a little bit more challenging.
It's a lot more challenging. It's a very old school process. I mean, it's masonry 101. And
so do you actually take it apart, put it on, or do you put those walls in front of it?
no, so we're doing more of the maintenance side of things, where the stuff that's all in between the stones. Right. So an old stone foundation, the strength of it's in the stones, and the glue that holds the stones in place from shifting is the mortar joints in between.
Yep.
And once, every 50 to 70 years, those mortar joints break down. And so it's kind of like replacing a roof, where you kind of just live in the house and you're like, well, it's time. The mortar joints are gone, because once those start to go, then the rocks start shifting. And then that's when you see big issues.
Is that when you start seeing the salt shaker move on a TV?
Yes.
Yeah. You start walking down the hallway and everything does this. Yeah.
Honey, I think the foundation needs to be jacked up.
Don't go into the light, Carol Ann.
So we do a lot of that old style house as well.
I believe that it was your company. This might have been before you. How long you been in with? Well, you've been in for.
I know I don't look like I'm 21, but I've been since I was 15, 16, so long time.
Long time. So maybe it was you. But the concrete block foundations, and this is basically the cement.
Yeah.
Yep.
Blocks that are, I remember going into a house where they were kind of like leaning into the house, and I am 99.9% sure that it was your business that came in, and you're basically, tell me what you would do in that situation, because I'm going to say it wrong.
Block foundations are tricky because they have all those individual pieces kind of cobbled together like Legos, right?
Yes.
Except instead of there having the little nub at the top, it's just the mortar in between the blocks that kind of hold it there. And as that goes, just like the stone foundations, any soil pressure can move those inward. You kind of get bellies on them, and you'll see like a long crack that goes down the middle, usually right where the grass line is. And so typically in those environments where you have that push in or tip in, we use carbon fiber reinforcement, where we would use a structural carbon fiber. Typically it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 16 inches wide, and it gets installed on the interior walls of the block foundation. And it does, we have to run a little bit of a calculation to see how many would be needed, but basically it gets put in every so many feet across that wall. And that's the equivalent of bolting on like a 1/2 inch thick steel plate every 3 or 4 feet. So it kind of locks that whole foundation back in together, and it can save tens and tens of thousands of dollars in, lifting the house and replacing a wall, because the vast majority of these issues are within a tolerance to be saved. And so rather than, investing, $50,000 on a foundation repair, it might be, 10% of that, just to fix that wall, to get it stabilized and let it continue on its life, because we can't control what the soil's doing on the outside without major excavation and major work, but we can reinforce the wall on the inside to resist all those forces.
While you're talking, I don't want to get off the subject of foundations, but you're talking about walls. Do you also work on huge retaining walls?
We do. I wouldn't say it's, we do. Mostly in home environments, I would say.
I mean.
Yeah.
I'm saying because, there is some properties where the retaining wall is required to support the house.
Yep.
And so I would think that would be something, because the path of least resistance with the water could damage.
Yeah, it definitely. I mean, I would say it's not our primary, means, but a lot of times, again, there's so many things you can do with these. Concrete repair is its own, category in the industry. And so when you have a retaining wall like that, it really depends on kind of how far gone it is. A lot of times it's just reinforcing it. Other times it's, major work.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine that the most common call that you're getting is to seal the wall that has a crack in it. At what point do you recommend that somebody's calling you for that?
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer, because there's a variety of ways that crack, especially for you guys trying to sell a house, can kind of pause the process. And so the natural thing is, well, if it leaks, get it fixed, right? That's kind of a no-brainer. But I see ones where you can't even stick your fingernail in, and then that one rainstorm gets it to leak, and then it leaks every time. And so, whether it's a VA loan or an FHA loan, sometimes that process will get stalled from a foundation crack. Sometimes the radon levels come up high. and that point of origin can be through foundation cracks. So in general, we don't know, there's only two types of cracks, ones that leak and ones that are going to leak. We just don't know when.
Right.
So we try to, we don't say, everything should be fixed. But it's important to understand, like, okay, is this structural? Is it not structural? And if it's not structural, are you leaking? Are you not leaking? Are there signs of moisture? Or has it been dry forever? But the reality is that it's just a point of entry for, insects. We get termites that come through there, wood boring beetles that can come through there. Carpenter ants can squeeze through cracks.
Had me at bugs.
Yeah. And so basically, the long story is that, any foundation crack can restrict the buyer pool if they see it, because it can be a bigger issue than it actually is. And so we try to, educate, people and homeowners that, even though it's not actively leaking on you during a rain event, there's all these reasons why you could repair this and you should repair this.
So when you're talking about structure, home inspectors will point out there's a crack. How does a homeowner know whether it's structure or not?
So the short answer is how it's oriented. Most vertical foundation cracks, or something that is in the vertical direction, are going to be more settling or shrinkage type cracks, which is the concrete curing and shrinking. The ones that are more horizontal are generally all in the structural category.
Okay.
Now that's not the absolute, but usually those are the two categories. And then what we'll see is if we have a vertical crack that starts the twisting process, that's when it becomes a foundation structural issue, which can happen to any settling or shrinkage crack if left unchecked for decades. That ice freezing and thawing tends to split the foundation and spread it apart, and then it starts to twist. And once that twisting motion happens, anything can happen. So the vast majority of the cracks that we deal with are non-structural. They're all just settling cracks.
And every time a consumer, even myself, if I heard, oh, there's a crack, right? You're kind of in freak out mode, right? Oh, this is going to be thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, because it's a foundation. Is it really that crazy, or is it more like if you're grabbing it in the beginning, it could be easily, just like a maintenance fee? I mean, where's the comfort for people to know about the cost?
Yeah, that's a good question, because we get that a lot. And with what we're doing in the repair side, more often than not, the homeowner is going to spend $2,000 or less to repair this. If it becomes, and that's in the early stages, right? Stages. And as that continues on, the price tends to go up to the point where you're talking tens of thousands of dollars, because of structural, right? Now you're looking at, you have to underpin the house, you have to pier, so there's these crazy systems that are kind of very rarely needed, but are needed in those severe cases. But if you get ahead of it, it generally is, like any maintenance issue, is going to be orders of magnitude less expensive.
Do you tend to do a lot of foundation work on properties that are being renovated by investors and being sold?
Yeah, especially if they're going to be doing a basement remodel.
Okay.
We get, whether it's a homeowner or a flip property, especially with the prevalence of spray foam. Once that spray foam gets on the wall, it's next to impossible to get it, access to it again. And it doesn't waterproof no matter what anyone tells you. And so if there was a crack that, a lot of times before the spray foam people get in there to get that R rating, we go in and repair all the cracks, because once they're hidden, there's no access to them outside of digging out your house.
What is a waterproofing process look like?
Sure. Well, let's just talk about a regular foundation crack, right? Okay. One that you've probably seen 100 times in the houses that you guys have. More often than not, there's one of two ways that we repair them. It's either going to be via an injection process or a carbon fiber an epoxy process. So the injection process is that if you have the crack that runs vertical, we will drill into the foundation at a 45-degree angle, because that crack goes all the way through the concrete to the outside. So if you imagine that wall is about 8 inches thick, we're going to hit it in the middle of there. And then we're going to do that every 4 to 6 inches from the top all the way down to the floor. And in those small holes that we drill, we put a little bit of mechanical fitting into the concrete. We then hook that up to a high pressure pump, and then we pump in a waterproofing material. It's a close-cell polymer material that physically glues the foundation together and waterproofs it from the inside all the way out to the soil. So there's no need to dig out a foundation. We can do it all from the inside. We don't have to worry about weather. We don't have to worry about what time of year. It can be done because it's all temperature controlled for the most part. The other way we do it is the carbon fiber process, which is very similar, except we use a different material that goes into the crack. And then over the top of the crack, you'll see a sheet of black carbon fiber that physically ties both sides of the foundation back together. Generally speaking, they're both the same price. And it's really just about what the right call is for that crack on that day with the conditions of what the concrete looks like and everything. So some have to go more towards an injection, some have to go more towards a carbon fiber, some are just, hey, this is what they both look like, homeowner. Which one do you want to look at more?
Yeah.
So
do you put in sump pumps? Are you doing that?
Yeah, we do. We don't do drain systems, but we do sump pumps. Most of the time, homes don't need a full drain system, but usually a sump pump is pretty straightforward to install.
What about the cracks that are on the floor that the water's coming from underneath?
Yeah, that's especially this time of year, we see it when it's cold because the ground can't absorb anything, so it just comes in.
Right.
So there's kind of two ways to look at those. They're non-structural. The floor is totally irrelevant to the structure of the house, usually, in almost every case. So the cracks are really, about keeping things tight and, radon, bugs, all the things we just talked about. That's it. So sealing them alone sometimes isn't enough because the amount of water pressure you can get under a floor. Right. Exactly. So, you can heave concrete, it can split and can crack just from water pressure. So usually step one is to fix the cracks, and then it's either monitored or closely then supported by a sump pump installation, because the sump pump's really there to take the pressure off the floor. Right. A lot of people think it's not where I get water. It's not going to go in there. It's it's actually there to get the water that's rising from underneath. Yeah. And so with floor cracks, a lot of times the repair itself is all you need. But if you're in an area where you have a high water table or you're susceptible to high water table issues, usually some pumps need to accompany it to maintain the integrity of the concrete.
Now, do you warranty your work?
We do. We do.
Is it transferable?
It is, which is very important for you guys.
Yes.
Yes. Depends on the level of the service, right? But everything's going to come with a workmanship warranty. And then in terms of waterproofing, most of our waterproofing does come with a, either a 10-year or beyond transferable warranty.
Nice.
That's good to know.
It is good to know. Yeah.
And I can be a little bit more specific when I ask, who fixed it?
Well, that's an important thing because, the warranty is only as good as the company that does it, right? And so, we've been doing this for over 30-something years. So if Johnny in the truck went and fixed it, you might be able to check that box. But John, we've repaired a lot of Johnny and the truck's repairs over the last 30-something years. How far do you
travel to?
The good news is you don't have to bring the house to me. So, we do all of Mass out to basically 91 and southern New Hampshire up to Concord, all of Rhode Island, and then northeast Connecticut. So we have a pretty big geographic area.
So you got quite a few people working.
I do. I have a bunch of guys who have been with me we have a lot of guys who've been with us for years.
That's awesome.
And they like what they do.
Yeah. That's
a lot of
great.
fun.
That's super.
Yeah. I feel like you just gave us so much information.
I'm like, I don't even know what else to say.
We're rarely speechless.
No, I was going to ask you, Sherri, when they pour foundations and stuff in the new construction that you do, is there ever a time that they have to call somebody to fix a crack? Is it too soon? Is there too soon for curating? What do you call it?
Yeah, when the curing process of the concrete. There is. Usually, but it's like 7 days.
Well, I know that the builder I work with always recommends that folks run a dehumidifier for the first year in new construction, to help with that process. Also, they're putting crushed stone and perforated pipes in below the floor of the foundation. So, there shouldn't be a drainage issue. You shouldn't ever be getting water. But I think that settling cracks are going to show up, as you said, usually that's early on, if there's going to be some. But in the wintertime, they're adding calcium to the concrete, just because now you're dealing with Mother Nature. So.
Yeah, we do a lot of repairs on houses that aren't even built on top, right? It's just, it can be as simple as the excavator hit it when they were backfilling. Right? It could be a settling crack. It could be just the vibration of if you're doing a whole development and you have big heavy trucks and that soil hasn't had a chance to kind of settle in, and that vibration can cause little cracks like that. But you're right, a new modern construction house has pretty good drainage as part of the site prep. But you know, I had an old time concrete guy tell me, he says, if you don't want cracks, you leave the concrete in the truck because it will happen. It's just inevitable.
I remember a home inspector commenting once in an antique house, you know, that these were all built with dirt floors. And at some point people wanted to bring in poor foundations, but you still have, you know, maybe field stone or, you know, granite and, you know, whatever for the walls. And you're going to get some water because the house, the way it was built, wasn't meant to be waterproof. Can you waterproof that?
It's very hard. And
it's porous.
It is. It's very porous. I mean, if you drive up and down any highway, you can see the water coming through the stones.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not even that, you know, that we're doing something wrong. I mean, the stones themselves are porous. And so, you know, and it's a lot of, you know, I'm going to categorize people here, but you know, it's a lot of young buyers who find these antique homes. They love the house.
Right.
And they say, gee, you know, I'd love to turn this into a playroom one day. And I'm like, okay, like let's talk about what that might look like, because, you know, with the stone foundation, you can get pretty far in terms of waterproofing. But it's diminishing returns. And you can spend half the value of the house in a stone foundation just to get it waterproof in the basement. And then on extreme events, you'll still have water just because of the materials of construction. So more often than not, it's usually corners where there's downspouts that tend to be tricky areas, and it's simple grading, extensions. And then a lot of times it's just masonry repairs to reestablish the joints of the foundation to create enough pressure resistance to have the water just kind of go back into the soil. And that's about the best you can do without going crazy expensive systems to, you know, help mitigate, because you can get carried away very quickly with stone foundations and waterproofing because like you said, they were never intended to be fully dry spaces. And now in the modern era, we try to turn them into living spaces, and it often sets people up for disappointment because then they, you know, have water and, you know, and they can't get rid of it.
What's your busiest time of year?
When it rains. Usually spring and usually fall are our busiest times of year. Summer tends to be pretty busy with, you know, people remodeling. And getting through, you know, hey, I want to turn this into a summer project and doing that. Wintertime is on events like we had last year where it was, you know, we had the snow like we have now, and then it rains 3 inches, everything melts, and it's got nowhere to go. So that's, you know, so those are more like one storm off type of things. But typically in the spring through the end of the fall is where we kind of.
Do you give free estimates?
We do.
So I think that's a good thing to know too, that if you're going into a property and you see maybe it's worth having it looked at because there's a comfort for the next buyer. But I also know some buyers are nervous when they hear about, well, we got this fixed, they see the work done, and it's a transferable warranty. Still gives that uneasiness. I think a lot of people just don't understand what that work was done.
Right.
What does that mean? It doesn't mean we just patched the hole, right? Because I probably used wrong verbiage when I was explaining it, but it's waterproof quite a bit. I mean, the whole thing. So I think if the homeowner would hold the documentation, which I'm sure you leave with them.
We do.
And that's available, that would be really helpful for people.
Yeah, and we do a lot of consultation for you know, people calling us and, you know, looking at a show and they love the house, but then they go downstairs, they see something, it's like, time out, what's going on down here? Because they're looking at something that they may not be expert in. Maybe you guys have only seen it a couple times. And so a lot, you know, the first thing is like, well, find out who repaired it. If it wasn't us, it's like, okay, find out who repaired it. Are they in business? Is there a warranty? You know, oftentimes I can look at a repair and know what kinds of materials they used. I can often tell you if it's professional or homeowner, because, you know, there's kind of signatures of what you can get at Home Depot or, you know, whatever big box store versus what we can get. And so usually it's, you know, there's an education process, you know, for the buyer or the seller of what they have. And sometimes it requires additional work. Sometimes it's fine as is, but usually it's, you know, as simple as looking at a couple photos and having a conversation.
Now, You do a podcast.
We do.
And is yours about educating the consumer, or is it more about crack daddy?
I mean, I'm not about that much self-promotion. I mean, we have run a podcast for ever and a day, and it is homeowner tips from both just general home maintenance all the way to specifics. We do a lot of case studies. I talk to a lot of people in a week, and I had a friend of mine say, "How can you possibly come up with new material?" It's like, well, the cracks don't change that much, but the stories do, because it's how they found it. It's a situation where it was in a selling process and it got held up, or whatever it might be. And so we just try to share the stories, because a lot of times a homeowner finds an issue and it's freak out mode because they don't know that, geez, probably everyone in this neighborhood has something similar to this.
So I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
You got a fun story that you could share with us?
Yes, I can share a fun story. I know how much you love bugs, so
Here we go.
so we had a customer call up yesterday during the day off, because it was a holiday, and they were about to do a remodel in their basement, and when they pulled off the drywall, there were termites everywhere in the basement. Because it was like an old 70s wood paneling house, and they were sick of looking at it, and they called the exterminator to come in, and they found that it was just coming through a crack that was about 1/8 of an inch wide, and they had about $25,000 worth of damage, both to the sill and to just the structure, and it was a simple $800 repair for us to prevent that.
Oh, geez.
So it's I never like to see that situation.
No,
but
that's not a funny story.
Well, it's a good story.
That's
a funny story.
Yeah, here's a funny one.
Oh, I mean.
Well, let me ask about that. So they never had any other evidence? They just pulled it. If they never pulled that off, they would never have known.
Never have known. I mean, they would have known eventually, because it would have just been at the point of total destruction.
Could be years.
Yeah, it could be years, and then they're thriving in that environment.
I feel like that's classic too, with the old wood paneling.
Yeah.
I remember doing a home inspection, and the paneling had started to decay, and that was when the home inspector found the termites, and they were live. And I just remember wanting to get the hell out of that house as quick as I could, and all day long I was itchy and irritated, and I just felt like something was crawling on me, even though I never got that close. But one of the things the home inspector said is, they're wood boring, they're not going into concrete.
Right.
And these things had burrowed a hole into the concrete because they must have been there for so long.
Unbelievable.
That it, just decay and water, and it had just broken away, and they found a little home there. And
that's it. You're coming to screen my foundation. All right. Who doesn't have bugs? Okay.
No bugs on me.
Yeah, we see all sorts of weird things, and basements are funny places, especially the old homes. We see a lot of we've been in a lot of really old homes and throughout New England, a lot of interesting places that were on the Underground Railroad, secret rooms and stuff.
That's cool.
So it is cool. And my
bodies
guys,
that were buried behind a wall.
Not that we know of, but
you're going to these stories.
I know.
Oh, well, we're going there.
But it's interesting because we're just custodians for the house for a period of time in a lot of cases.
That's true.
And we just try to make them outlive us.
I like when you can find old newspapers that were stuffed in the walls.
Stuffed in the walls, absolutely.
Or what about the old medicine cabinets where people would drop their razor blades in there, and they're all stuck in that wall there. And
there's a lot of mill towns, and I'm sure you guys see this around here as well, that have the random toilet in the middle of the bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's well, that's a bold place to go to the bathroom.
Yes. I know
So
for
cool.
sure. Wow. But all right, well, I think I'm getting
stuff.
Warm with my Cruella.
Oh yeah, your great outfit
Deville
over there.
thing here.
Where's
Yeah.
your Dalmatians?
So I know.
They're on you.
I'm wearing my puppies. But thank you so much for coming in. Are you a Bruins fan? I'm just looking at the colors.
Just by the colors, yes,
okay.
I am. Although the season's not been the best season, but yes, I am.
Yeah, well, Boston strong.
Yeah. Yep.
Tell us where people can find you.
Yep. You can find us online at a1crackman.com or a1foundationcrackrepair.com, whatever one you feel like typing in.
And your podcast?
Podcast is the Crackman Podcast. And you can find us on all the socials through that as well. So
that's awesome.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And if you're looking for Lana or I, you can find us at Coldwell Banker in Leominster. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Lots of thanks.
Appreciate it.
Awesome.